This is every fight to make next after UFC 273, Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie. I've got all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. I'll slowly reveal their next opponents one by one as the video goes on, and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with the main event. Alexander Volkanovski puts on one of the best championship performances of all time against the Korean Zombie, completely destroys him, and it leaves us wondering what's next for Alexander Volkanovski. But you don't have to wonder for very long, because in my opinion, there's a man at featherweight that's already earned his shot at the title. He's worked his way back up after losing to Alexander Volkanovski twice before. Clearly, don't play that game about Holloway winning one and Volkanovski winning the other, but there's enough casual fans out there that can't accept that Holloway has lost twice, so he must have a trilogy. Not only that, but he's earned a trilogy. He's beat Yair Rodriguez, he beat Calvin Kattar. They were both top contenders on streaks of their own. So let's make Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 3 immediately. Alexander Volkanovski took no damage whatsoever. He said he wouldn't mind fighting on the UFC 274 card, UFC 275 card. Let's see him on the card of International Fight Week, which has Israel Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier as the main event, his CKB teammate, and let's have Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 3 in the co-main event. That's what I call an International Fight Week card, okay? Adesanya versus Cannonier, Volkanovski versus Holloway 3. You just need to sprinkle on some decently big names on the undercard of that, and it's an amazing card because of how strong the top of the card is. Let's make Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway the trilogy. Holloway's ready to go right now. He's recovered from his injury. He actually said he would be ready to go for this actual card against Alexander Volkanovski, but the company moved on and made the Korean Zombie fight already because they assumed he'd be injured for a little bit longer. So they're both ready to go. Volkanovski said he wants activity, so let's turn him around for July in 3 months' time, have him as a really active champion against Max Holloway in the trilogy, and I think it's way more exciting now because I think Holloway fans kind of deluded themselves to believe after Holloway did his performance against Calvin Kattar that Holloway's going to destroy Volk in the trilogy. After watching what Volk just did to the Korean Zombie, even Holloway fans that can't accept the results of the second fight will think to themselves, oh God, does he just really badly lose here? Like, there's a real intense anxiousness in the build-up to this bout between both of the fan bases. The hardcore fans who understand the sport of MMA that know Volkanovski won, and Holloway's fanboys that can't accept it. So let's make that fight right now. Volkanovski versus Holloway 3. I want to see it happen. And honestly, even outside of their complaints about the second fight, Holloway's earned another shot at the belt. 2 contenders in a row. Former champion. He was the defending champ in the featherweight division. Let's give him a rematch. You know what I mean? Let's give him that trilogy. And also, it'd be nice to see Volkanovski have a little bit more of a clear win if he is going to win against Holloway, to really silence the doubt altogether. Who knows, maybe this time he gets a finish because he's starting to pack a little bit more heat into his punches and starting to seek out the finish and the dominant performances a little bit more than playing that point-striking game. Volkanovski, Holloway the trilogy. Let's make it happen on the co-main events of International Fight Week. Adesanya versus Cannonier. And I think this fight will actually be more amped up and excited for than the main event Adesanya Cannonier. Adesanya Cannonier doesn't really have too much draw power. I know it is an excited fight if you're a hardcore fan, but the casual fans don't really know the name Jared Cannonier too much, so it's not a massively anticipated matchup for International Fight Week's headliner, so this would really help bump up that card in terms of the interest levels. Make it happen. We move on to the loser of the main event, the Korean Zombie. He lost really badly. He's 35 years of age. What's next for him? Retire, man. Like, you don't need to anymore. Like, normally I wouldn't say this because fighters don't earn crazy money. You know, a normal person maybe wouldn't be set for life if they'd never won a belt or anything like that and they'd just only been a top contender for a very long time. Go be with your family, man. Go be your family. They're young. They're in those development stages where they're like, they really kind of need attention from their parents. I know how like important it is to have that attention from your parents at that young age. It can really mess up a family if you don't have that close relationship with your parents. I was basically part-time fostered when I was younger, so like it's really important to have that in terms of like the strength building of a relationship of a family long term, to have your parents around. And Korean Zombie's in a position, if you look at his YouTube channel, to where he can retire. Like, he just took so much damage to where I believe his chin is now compromised. In all honesty, I don't think we're going to see the Korean Zombie ignoring the shots of Josh Emmett, who is the only likely guy I'd actually see potentially be a matchup for the Korean Zombie after this. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see, can Korean Zombie take the shots of Josh Emmett? He's 35. He's had his career. I don't need to see that, okay? Retire. You've got your YouTube channel. I know from my ad rates on my small view videos that with his thousands and hundreds of thousands of views and millions of views that he gets on videos, he's probably raking in a couple of $100,000 a year without sponsors, without ticket sales to some of the events that he does. So he's going to be making himself a very good living. Korean Zombie versus his family in a nice way, being a happy father and having his brain cells intact. He's already had a really long career. Just go and see your kids. You know what I mean? You don't need to do this anymore. You're not going to be a world champion. I don't like his chances beating the other up-and-coming contenders either. Retire, man. Just retire. Let's move on to the co-main event. Aljamain Sterling. The Weasel went back. I actually said the Weasel's probably going to revisit it, watch the first round, and consider Aljamain Sterling the winner on technicality because of the criteria. Aljamain Sterling's the winner. Deaded the hype for me in the bantamweight division, but either way, it's still exciting. So let's do him versus TJ Dillashaw next. They had a good moment where Aljo called him out in the post-fight interview. We can't do the rematch for Yan. We can't have that trilogy go on. It will hold up the division a little bit too much. We need to move on. It's like the Figueiredo-Moreno quadrilogy. You just can't hold up a division that long. Aljamain Sterling versus TJ Dillashaw. Perfect matchup to make right now. They had him cage side. People know the name TJ Dillashaw. It will be an amped up fight. It won't be as amped up as Yan versus Dillashaw, but in the case that it won't be as amped up, at least at the press conference, they can have some English to English back and forth exchanges, because I know for a fact that these two are going to talk a bunch of shit at the press conference and go back and forth at each other. So it won't be an anticipated matchup maybe when it gets signed and in a couple of weeks of training camp before. But in like the press conference moments and the embedded moments and stuff like that, there is going to be a lot more amped up excitement for this matchup. Aljamain Sterling, TJ Dillashaw, make the matchup happen. Dillashaw technically beat Sandhagen. He's a big name. You kind of want some bantamweights to get a win over him, so it removes that shadow of the division, because again, he never lost his belt. He didn't lose to any of the bantamweights. Let's make this matchup happen. Dillashaw, Aljamain Sterling, and then we can kind of move on with the bantamweight division. And speaking of moving on with the bantamweight division, Petr Yan needs an opponent as well. He lost in the co-main event. I still believe he's the better fighter. I think he's a more complete guy. I think he's a better bantamweight. I reckon he'll go on and beat Aljo in the trilogy. However, we have to move on. And I think the best matchup for Petr Yan here is not like a rematch with Sandhagen. Aldo versus Cruz is what I think they're going to go with next, which is why both of them have been very silent recently. So let's make Petr Yan versus Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera is taking on Rob Font at the end of this month. Perfect time schedule. They're going to be on very similar schedules to turn around the same time. 4 months after Marlon Vera, if he does beat Rob Font, beats Rob Font. I believe he will beat Rob Font. That's why I've put his picture here. If I thought Font was going to win, I'd put his picture there. But I think Petr Yan, Marlon Vera is a big name. If he beats Rob Font in the main event of a fight night, he's going to be an even bigger name. And he's also going to have earned his spot in the main event of a fight night as well. I reckon they do Sandhagen versus Merab Dvalishvili, Yan versus Marlon Vera, Dominic Cruz versus Jose Aldo for a title shot as well. And in the meantime, just to move the division forward and have a contender who needs to jump up if he does beat Rob Font, Petr Yan versus Marlon Vera. They're a main event of a fight night and a great main event of a fight night as well. The style matchup makes me so excited because they're basically very similar guys, like constant pressure, constant onslaught, constant volume, dog tough, going for the kill all the time. Petr Yan, Marlon Vera, perfect matchup if he does get past Rob Font this weekend. If Rob Font wins, I guess we can see Rob Font versus Petr Yan instead. But I think that Marlon Vera gets the job done over Rob Font, so let's do Petr Yan, Marlon Vera. Do I need to sell that to you? That's an amazing matchup. Yan's probably going to be now at number 2 in the bantamweight division. If Marlon Vera beats Rob Font, I think he'll be something like number 5 or 4 in the bantamweight division. Make that matchup happen. Moving on down the card. Khamzat Chimaev got a big win against Gilbert Burns. I still see people acting like Gilbert Burns won. Stop it. Get some help. Okay? To quote a famous American meme. Khamzat Chimaev clearly won rounds 1 and 3. Clearly. I've rewatched it. There's no denying it in my mind now. So let's do Khamzat Chimaev. This, I don't agree with this because it messes up the welterweight division, but I want it anyway. I want it anyway. Khamzat Chimaev, Colby Covington. Let me tell you why I didn't want this to happen. The winner of Luque versus Muhammad has earned a title shot. Leon Edwards has ruined welterweight, in my opinion, because, listen, his last 2 wins is against RDA, who's not in the division anymore, and Nate Diaz, who is not in the division and wasn't ranked at the time anyway. Like, he arguably hasn't earned a title shot. Like, I know people talk about the 9-fight win streak and this and that. Like, Chimaev, Li Jingliang, Gilbert Burns. Better wins than Leon Edwards in the space of a year of being in the welterweight division. Edwards just sits out, takes on boring fights. He turned down Wonderboy, turned down Gilbert Burns. Like, he's ruined it, kind of. Like, I actually feel like Leon Edwards doesn't really deserve a title shot, but he's going to get one anyway. And he's going to get one, and that's going to hold up the division forever. Then the winner of that's probably going to have to wait out for another 6 months, because that's just how it is, and it's really annoying, but we have to deal with it. And it doesn't make sense to do Chimaev versus Covington, because the winner of Luque Muhammad is going to have to earn a title shot. And if they do win, and they don't get a title shot, they don't have anyone to fight other than maybe Sean Brady, who's at number 9. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's Leon Edwards in this whole, he deserves it, 9-fight win streak against no one who's ranked or relevant in the welterweight division whatsoever. Like, it ruins it a bit. So let's do Khamzat Chimaev, Colby Covington, and even, like, if he wins, then we can maybe do the winner of that versus the winner of Luque versus Muhammad, and just hold him back a little bit longer. I guess it's good to have a little bit of a logjam, because it helps build a bit of talent, and there's nothing worse than an undeserving contender. So if anything, you'd rather they be over-deserving as a contender, you know what I mean? It builds the hype of a contender, like Tony Ferguson for so long in the lightweight division, and Khabib for so long in the lightweight division as well. So let's make Khamzat Chimaev, Colby Covington, and I think Covington's got a decent chance now as well. And if I was Colby Covington, I would be saying, me and you, Khamzat, 3 months. If you're not ready, I'm not fighting you. I'll move on to the winner of Luque Muhammad. That's an amazing play by Covington. You don't want to give Chimaev one time to recover, and 2, time to develop even more on what he's learned in that last fight against Gilbert Burns. So if I was Covington, I'd say, I'm fighting in July, ABC card in August, me versus you, Chimaev, and if you're not ready, I'm moving on. And play that game. Does Chimaev take it? Maybe. I reckon he will. So let's make Khamzat Chimaev, Covington, amazing matchup. And it just sells itself at this point, because if he went out there and destroyed Gilbert Burns, as I predicted him to, people would be like, oh, he easily beats Covington. But now we've seen humanity in him. Now it's all of a sudden, I've got Covington, I've got Chimaev, I've got Covington, I've got Chimaev. There's like a debate about it now, and Covington actually has a really good chance, and there's going to be people singing his praises. And also, if there's someone who can maybe get under Khamzat's skin and get him to fight emotional the way he did against Gilbert Burns, it's Colby Covington. And you know he's going to try and get under his skin as well in the build-up. So let's make Khamzat Chimaev, Colby Covington, a great matchup. It ruins the welterweight division to make this matchup. It creates a logjam. However, let's just make it happen, because that ABC card needs a big main event. So let's do it. It's going to be amazing. Make it happen. Moving on to another fight on the card. Gilbert Burns lost in the feature fight. Very close decision. Very clear decision. Can't believe people still think he won, but great job, Gilbert Burns. Amazing performance. In my opinion, Gilbert Burns' next opponent should be... I'm sorry, Gilbert Burns. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry about this. I'm so sorry. It just makes sense. Like, Sean Brady's going to be looking for a fight real soon. So you can't do Sean Brady versus Gilbert Burns, because Gilbert Burns is going to need a little bit of time off after that fight. Like, at least 5 or 6 months. You know, he's an older guy. He can't recover the same way a young guy like Chimaev can. He's had his damage in his career before that moment as well. Like, he's been finished in his career, and he just took all that more damage in that fight with Khamzat Chimaev. So let's give him 5 months, 6 months time. And Shavkat Rakhmonov's fighting Neil Magny in about 7 or 8 weeks. It's just been confirmed verbally between the pair of them. So I assume it will happen in around 7 or 8 weeks. And the scheduling works out perfectly. And maybe Shavkat Rakhmonov has his human moment against Neil Magny. Doesn't look as dominant as he has done against guys like Carlston Harris and even Mikel Prazeres. So let's make Gilbert Burns versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I'll tell you this, the promo for it One, it can be the main event of a fight night because Burns is a big enough name in his own right now. His following has gone way up. People didn't really like him after the Wonderboy win. People really like him after this loss to Khamzat Chimaev. So I think he can main event a card. Shavkat Rakhmonov, let's say he beats Neil Magny in the co-main event of a fight night card or the main card of a pay-per-view card. Then we do him versus Gilbert Burns. And also, you can't tell me I'm feeding Burns to the wolves. Because Burns just showed I can beat these hyped up prospects. I can beat these hyped up prospects that you're giving me. So you can't argue that, oh, wow, feeding Gilbert Burns to the wolves. If anything, you're feeding Shavkat to Burns. And the promo would be in that really epic promo voice that they have. Like, Gilbert Burns is he's no stranger to defeating up-and-coming prospects, or he's no stranger to testing out up-and-coming prospects. You know what I mean? And that would be the build-up. Like Shavkat Rakhmonov, an up-and-coming prospect, and he's going to the guy who recently nearly derailed another up-and-coming prospect in Khamzat Chimaev with a bunch of hype. So let's do Shavkat Rakhmonov. If he beats Neil Magny, give him to Gilbert Burns. And equally, if Neil Magny wins, give him to Gilbert Burns as well. The winner of Magny versus Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to be number 9 or 8 in the welterweight division. I reckon Burns is going to shimmy down to about number 4 or 5. If Chimaev's going to jump into the top 3, he probably will go below Leon Edwards. Probably he'll slide below the winner of Luque versus Muhammad as well. So I reckon he'll go to number 5, number 4 at welterweight. 4 versus number 9 makes sense. And plus he's old, so you have to give him these up-and-comers because you're not trying to build the career of Gilbert Burns at this point from a business standpoint. Moving on to the other 3 fights that I want to break down of who their next opponent is. Mackenzie Dern, daylight robbery against Tecia Torres. Absolutely brutal. One of the worst I've seen in a very long time, but people simp for her, so no one's even mentioning it other than me. Tecia Torres lost, or she won, sorry, but Mackenzie Dern got her hand raised. I don't think she's going to be moving up the rankings because it's all a logjam right now. So let's do her versus the winner of Andrade versus Lemos. Don't quote me on this yet. I'm not decided on who I think wins out of Lemos and Andrade. I'm leaning the way of Andrade, though. I think I'm leaning that way. I think she might be the favourite in that fight as well. She's a bigger guy. Oh, Jesus Christ, I'm going to get cancelled. She's a bigger girl at strawweight. So she's a bit more physical down there compared to at flyweight, and she's even beaten top flyweight contenders like Caitlin Chukagian pretty easily. And we saw a little bit of a humanity in Lemos as well against Angela Hill. So I do believe that Jessica Andrade, I'm leaning that way in terms of my prediction in that matchup. So let's do Mackenzie Dern versus Andrade if she does beat Amanda Lemos in a couple of weeks' time. Moving on, Mark Madsen. In my opinion, robbed Vince Pichel in the 3rd round, but either way, he got a win. He's put together a lot of wins in the lightweight division. He kind of deserves a ranked opponent. Someone who's barely ranked in the lightweight division right now that makes sense as a matchup. Carlos Diego Ferreira, in my opinion, makes sense. You can't really give him to a Gregor Gillespie. He's earned a better matchup than a Mark Madsen. He can't really look back in the rankings. There's a lot of guys like Gamrot and Arman Tsarukyan who can't really be looking too far back right now to an unranked guy. So let's do Mark Madsen, Carlos Diego Ferreira. Muchas gracias. Makes sense to me, in my opinion. Très bien. Make it happen. Mark Madsen, Carlos Diego Ferreira. Great matchup. And it'd be interesting to see because Carlos Diego Ferreira, before he got his rib broke against Mateusz Gamrot, was making Mateusz Gamrot look pretty human as well. So, Mark Madsen, Carlos Diego Ferreira, both old guys. Cancel one of them out. Keep one of them on. Make that matchup. And Ian Garry also had a decent win. Not the best performance. In my opinion, he's not going to be having too much hype moving forward. But, in my opinion, his next matchup should be... I was going to put him against Brian Barberena, but I was thinking, you know what? I want a little bit of a younger guy that can test him a little bit in there. So I think this is a dangerous matchup. It's a step forward in his career. It's not too far of a step forward because let's not forget Darian Weeks was still behind him in the rankings. So I'm not trying to match him up with a Nico Price or anything like that or a Tim Means. But I think this is a decent guy with quite a bit of a name himself and quite a bit of hype himself. That would be a really good test to see Ian Garry take on. And I think it'd also be a very interesting matchup and a very entertaining matchup compared to the one he had against Darian Weeks. And I want to see him against Jeremiah Wells. That's who I want to see him against. This way, you keep one of them moving forward. The winner of that fight is going to have a bunch of hype as well to finally get towards those names like Nico Price and Tim Means and stuff like that, just outside the rankings of the welterweight division. Ian Garry, Jeremiah Wells. I think that's a decent fight. And you can put it as the headliner of the prelims of a pay-per-view again. Maybe McGregor's pay-per-view. McGregor's probably going to come back in August or September for a pay-per-view card. Put Ian Garry and Jeremiah Wells as the headliner of the prelims. It makes all the sense in the world to me. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.